Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining today's webinar on college tennis. So first of all, I'd like to welcome all of you in this. The purpose today is for us to share kind of the basic rules and regulations, the process, the knowledge, things like that. Everything that you pretty much need to know to do it yourself, right? So, the whole goal for this is to share the education in this. So as a company, as a platform, our goal is to disseminate the knowledge, and if anybody needs further help, they can come to us. But today's presentation should answer pretty much all the basic questions. So what we're going to do is, also at the end of each slide, I will pause to see if people have any questions, because we're going to cover several topics at different segments within the slide. So we're going to start off the presentation in just a couple more minutes, and then at the very end of the presentation, you registered, so you'll also get a copy of the presentation. And we're also promoting an app within that where you can come in and free of cost, you can ask questions digitally, in a few areas, right? Like whether it's college tennis, whether it's a second opinion regarding your player development, things like that. So we'll cover a little bit of that at the very end as well. So again, guys, just thank you very much for joining. Just give it a few minutes and we'll kick it off right away. Right, everybody. So again, we'll go ahead and then kick off the presentation, and then we'll go through slide by slide, and it's pretty informal, so you can ask questions, and then we'll see if you can answer. So first of all, I'd like to give a little bit of a background, so why you're listening to me and why I think that I have the right to speak in this matter. So I'm one of the two co-founders of Tennis Wizard, and the way it came is like I have a background in tennis, so I played college tennis. As a matter of fact, it says here, I played, Division One college tennis, but I also played NAIA college tennis and Division Two as well. So it was an interesting case in my situation, because I switched once because the scholarship was not good, and then I got a much better deal. And then one of the programs I played at Division Two, the program got eliminated. So, those are some unusual cases. So as a student, I had a lot of experience in kind of going through this back in the day when there was no internet and no help and things like that, about how to switch colleges, how to negotiate scholarships, things like that. So over the years, I've been, I'm a PDR certified tennis coach. So I have been an assistant coach at a D1 university as well. And I've done that for several years. I'm currently quite involved in tennis in multiple capacities. So I'm a part owner at a tennis club in the Dallas area that's primarily owned by the Dent family, the Taylor Dent, who's a former professional player. I also spend my time volunteering quite a bit, right? So I'm a volunteer with the USTA. So I'm in the board of directors currently with the USTA Texas. I've been the chair of several committees, and I'm part of the USTA National Pro Circuit Committee. So that's the committee that, assigns the 15Ks and that, those type of tournaments, right? Like over the, in the US. I'm also a tennis dad, so I'm going through the same journey. So I got two kids that are 16 years old. They're both playing ITF juniors. My daughter's also mixing up a little bit of, 15 and 25Ks. So I have some experience, some personal experience, some professional experience, things like that about this whole pathway, right? And obviously they are at that age at 11th grade where they're looking at class of 2024 to go in and uh, go to college. So that's a little bit of my background, so that you guys know that what I'm talking about. I'm going through this myself. So also the other part of that background is the company that we co-founded, the holdings company is called Compumatrix. So it's a health tech company, and we learned quite a bit over the last 10 or so years about how to decipher knowledge, right? Like whether uh, knowledge on health related activities by providing a platform, so they get just in time information, how to decipher it and all that. So how does it link to Tennis Wizard is we wanted to bring that healthcare knowledge, and we brought the recruitment knowledge for how to get college scholarship, put it together into a platform that can be used, right? Because what we saw in the last few years, especially overseas outside of the US, we've been traveling to India, South America, things like places like that. There's a lot of consulting companies that charge an exorbitant amount of money because, and mainly basically they're trying to place a person in one of the colleges. And our goal is to democratize that. So hence the background about how we started Tennis Wizard, specifically the part of Tennis Wizard that's focused towards college tennis. So that's sort of the kind of the background about how we started, and a little bit of our background. And then without further ado, I'd like to move directly into kind of the meat of the presentation. So what we're going to do in this part is we're going to go through each of these slides, and I'm going to cover the high level information. And then at the end of the slide, I'll take a pause and see how the questions are coming. If there's no questions, we'll move on. If there's a lot of questions, we might pause it for the end. And if there's a few questions, we'll just handle them as we go. So let's talk about the college tennis organization. So college tennis in the US is basically, the first thing to know is there are several governing bodies that run college tennis. So NCAA is the biggest one, right? So everybody, all over the world knows about NCAA. So you hear about all these marquee universities. There, a lot of them are, part of the NCAA. So NCAA is also divided into three divisions. So there is Division One, Division Two, and Division Three. Okay, and I'm going to go through them in a little bit more detail in just a minute. So a lot of people, especially outside of the US, do not know that outside of NCAA, there is also the governing body called NAIA. So this is a cluster of small colleges, and they as well have very competitive colleges where especially when it comes to tennis. Okay, so they are outside the NCAA system. And then we also have NJCAA. So NJCAA are 2-year universities. So what that means is people come in, they go the freshman year, which is your first year, then they go the sophomore year, which is your second year. And once they graduate from that, they move on, if they choose to continue college, to a 4-year university where they go and finish their third and fourth year, their junior and senior year. So that's the general cluster of how the organization, the governing bodies work. So want to talk to you a little bit about kind of a misconception that I hear all the time, especially when I'm traveling outside the US. So people think like the Division One from a tennis perspective is the best division, two is next, and three is third. Like almost like you're looking at like a league structure of soccer in Europe or something like that. That's not how it's in reality. The way the divisions work has nothing to do really with tennis, or very little to do with tennis. What it is the size of the university, the number of sports. There's a variety of criteria, the courses they offer, of how the universities are clustered, in which division they go, and all that. So we don't need to know all those rules. These rules keep changing. So the main thing to come out of it is Division One does not necessarily mean that it's the higher caliber team and a Division Two team qualifies and moves up to one. It does not work like that. Okay. Now, with that said, the Division One teams have a lot of times, especially the higher end teams, have the larger budget, so they obviously can support the players more. They get better players and things like that. However, there's a several very good tennis teams in Division Two, as well. So that's something to be keep in mind. So Division Three is a little bit interesting. So Division Three is supposed to be, or traditionally it has been, a cluster of private universities that are more academically focused. Okay, so you have all these, you know, big universities and mid-sized small colleges that are very academic. They do not give athletic scholarships, so they compensate that by other ways. We'll cover that in the scholarship section. But they nowadays there are Division Three colleges also with extremely high level teams that can compete with D1, and that's because these people, the students want to come and play for these schools because they want to get the right academic degrees, right? Like if you're going to MIT, for example, yeah, I mean, if tennis lets you, it helps you get into MIT, I mean, that's a great achievement by itself. So a lot of people think like that, and more good players are coming into Division Three. Um, NAIA as a division, as I said, is outside of the NCAA system. So there's a lot of small colleges that are exceptionally good. The difference is the NAIA, the rules and regulations are a little bit more lax as far as NCAA is concerned. So there are requirements regarding academics, regarding people taking time off, things like that have been more lenient. So, over the years, traditionally, you have seen older people, like, kids that have tried to play pro, they failed, or they chose that, I'm going to take a pause, they come back. I mean, but some of the NAI teams are phenomenal, right? Like if you Google a team called Georgia Gwinnett, it's a small college in Georgia, rural Georgia. I mean, their team, they have won national several times, but if you look at their roster, you look at the players playing in the men's team, for example, I mean, these are guys that are ranked between 700 to 1400 ATP. So these guys have very high UTR, 12 plus UTRs. Maybe they even have 13 UTRs. I haven't gone and checked it, but so these teams can compete with any top 10 NCAA team. Obviously, their players have played futures, challengers, things like that. So it's really important to understand that, again, the tennis level does not necessarily coincide directly with the division or the size of the college and all that. So you sort of, that's the art in finding the right mix. And then going back to NJCAA, like we covered, the NJCAA is a set of the junior colleges. uh, Traditionally, a lot of players like to come to those for, number one, they give more scholarships. Number two, the colleges cost less. And there are several colleges there as well that has been a pipeline to send players to really top D1 schools. Like, I mean, I live in Texas, and in Texas, there is, Tyler Junior College, right? Like, so that's been traditionally a very strong college, and NJCAA college that produces good players. So before I move on further, I'm going to take a pause on this point, but I want to mention one thing real quickly before I move on. Interchangeably in the US, when people are referring to colleges, they also call it schools. So the schools, colleges, and universities, they're sort of interchange. Schools is almost a colloquial term to define it. There is a difference, technical difference between college and university, but from a tennis standpoint, from a tennis parlay, we don't need to worry about that. So with that said, this is a pretty important topic. And before I move on, I'm just going to take a quick pause to see if anybody has any questions. You can go and unmute. I think and then once you finish your questions, if you please go back and remute it, we'll appreciate that. So I'm just going to give it a couple seconds or like a minute or so to see if anybody has any questions regarding the organization structure, about how college tennis is run from a division level. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next part then, which is the conferences. So all this again, we don't need to go deep down within it. All the divisions that play, they are all broken down into smaller groups of, between 8, 12, teams, right, that compete with each other. So you can think of division as the large cluster, and then you have the smaller clusters within them. They're called the conferences. So there's like hundreds of them. You don't need to know the names of them. You don't need to bother about those too much at all. You just need to understand how it works. So these teams, traditionally play each other in the spring. Mainly, sometimes nowadays, sometimes the teams, all of them don't even play each other. But what they do is at the end, they go into the conference championship. So that's a really, really important one in the spring season, because at the conference championships, typically the winners move on, right, to the next level, where they move to the regionals and then eventually to the NCAA nationals or the NAI nationals, things like that. So that structure, to kind of become, the top of the conference or to stay on the higher part of the conference and move on, that's really, really important for all the colleges. So the college coaches, they really look for conference success. The next one I want to cover is ITA, which is the Intercollegiate Tennis Association. So you're going to see a lot of, you Google it, you see ITA. So ITA is not a division by itself. ITA is an organization that works only in tennis, and their job is to set the rules and administer tournaments for, the spring team tournaments, some of the fall tournaments. They also work in conjunction with NCAA and NAIA quite a bit for the national championships. So they provide the rules, right? How's the scoring going to be? What's the format for the, for the events, right? Things like that. So you can almost think of them as a rules and regulations people. Uh, they run some tournaments, but sometimes, it's their blessing that they provide, and their laws. So again, we don't need to know too much details about ITA. Just I wanted to cover it so everybody that's listening in can understand what it is. um the next one is the spring duel. So the spring is really starts like, January, and it goes all the way to April, May championships, things like that. So that time of the year is where the teams play each other. So that's when you have the team events. I mentioned the conference. They play each other in the conference. They play outside the conference. The coaches set up different teams. So that's kind of the marquee part of college season. Okay. In the fall, which is, from August to December, traditionally teams only played tournaments. So they played college tournaments, right? So they would go in, and then sometimes they have duels, but they are in mixed formats. They are more like practice matches, but mainly they play tournaments. So back in the day, there used to be a very, very marquee tournament. It's no longer there, called Rolex Indoors, right? So that was like a key tournament. I mean, NCAA just made an announcement of another marquee event coming up, from this year, as far as the fall tournament event is concerned. So that's what happens nowadays, because the teams are trying to attract a lot of players who have pro aspiration, things like that. A lot of teams also take players officially to pro events like the 15Ks and the 25Ks, and there are some players that only play those in the team. Like for an example, if you look at the teams, like, I'm just going to give two examples. Like, you look at the teams from Stanford, right, the women's team, or for Texas A&M, like a lot of their top players, they are, they are not even playing the fall, the the ITA run tournaments, the college tournaments. They're mainly playing, the 15K, 25K, things like that. And the colleges have some limitations of how many events they can support financially. But outside of that, they're also letting players go out and play. So this is a very important thing I wanted to mention, because a lot of people have this idea that, okay, I go to college and I have pro aspirations, and that's done. They won't let me play. That is not true. Okay. So the colleges also are supporting a lot now for players to play pro if they choose to do that. They're not going to force you to do that. And what I mean by support, obviously, they're providing the infrastructure support with the coach, the assistants, things like that. And they can also pay for some events, and some you're going on your own. But again, that's something that they're more than willing to help. So that's before I move to the slide again, I'm going to do one quick pause to see if anybody has any questions. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next slide now. So this is a very key one, right? The scholarships. So first of all, I want to talk about how the scholarship package works. What are the different types of scholarships and how the process actually works, okay? So say you don't come to us, right? Like for, for any professional help, or you don't go to a consultant and you're doing it by yourself. So the first thing is to look at the colleges to understand where you want to go, things like that, right? And then obviously to have this conversation with the college coaches. But as the discussions get serious, what happens is the college coaches get you connected with somebody that's from their financial aid office, right? So these are the people that come in and that their only goal is to try to get you into the college and how to create the best package. Okay. And the way the package works is it's a combination of, it's not one thing, it could be just one, but it's generally a combination of. So you get your athletic scholarship, which is your tennis scholarship, then you get your academic scholarship, and then your need-based and additional scholarship. So I'm going to explain that, right? So the athletic scholarship is purely, and there's a chart that we cover about how it looks like and all that, and funded and non-funded, and we'll explain that, in a subsequent slide. The athletic scholarship is basically you're a tennis player, you have proven with a good junior career or playing pros or whatever level you are, and that college believes that you can make an impact. So they're offering you money to come and play for them. And this money is given in the form of, tuition coverage, food, staying, things like that. That's the athletic scholarship. Okay. So then comes the academic scholarship. So there's also, as a general student coming in, you have option for academic scholarship. So you have your SAT scores, you have your GPA from high school, or you have done something phenomenal. Maybe you have a patent, things like that. So you're just because you're getting an athletic scholarship doesn't mean that you cannot get an academic scholarship. So that is also a very, very viable option for the student athletes when they come in. Okay. Then the third one is a need-based, all right? So all these universities, in the US, they have the need-based scholarships, and that's why a lot of foreign students come in, right? So you're coming in from a country where maybe your currency is not valued very high. Your parents may be doing well, but they, when you convert into dollar, maybe not as good. So you can also show that, okay, you have actually financial need. You qualify for tennis, you're a pretty decent academic student, but you need the money, right? And so they have financial aid programs. I mean, that's not a maze that we cover directly, because obviously every college is different and the financial aid advisors are the one that do it. So for American students, for American, kids, there's a, the options are a little bit more. There's need-based grants, things like that. And obviously for foreigners as well that are coming on a visa, F1 visa, there's those as well. Okay. So and then the last one, what I call is the additional scholarship. So this is not really a term, but this is a catch-all, right? So for example, there are also scholarships that are there that people don't really necessarily think of. Like, for example, there's different churches, they provide their own scholarships to people in that denomination, right? So a lot of the private universities are affiliated with the church. I know players that went to TCU, did not quite make the cut in the in the tennis scholarship, but they're good enough to be part of the team, so they got something from the church because there's an affiliation. So those are again areas that people need to look and see, okay, how is my whole package going to look like, right? So that's how the scholarship works overall when they put a package. Okay. um I'm going to just cover this real quick and then I'll pause. That the headcount scholarship versus equivalency scholarship. So this is a very important one for Division One, and it's only for athletic scholarships. Okay, so for tennis scholarships for the women for D1, it's called headcount. So headcount means a team, a fully funded team. It means like if the team has funding to cover scholarships, which is a lot of these teams, right? If they're fully funded, uh, they have 8 scholarships. Okay. Headcount scholarships means the 8 cannot be divided. Like I cannot get 12 players and I have 8 and I give one half a scholarships and the other one a quarter and then 2 I give full. We can't do that in Division One with the athletic scholarships for women's tennis. Headcount means one person gets covered all, and the all means it's all, right? It's including, obviously, it's including your academic tuition, your staying, food, things like that, and then on top of that, now they also give colleges are, and that's a little bit of an optional, but the colleges are giving a living allowance cost. There's a little bit extra money also they're giving now on top of everything full. So that's an exceptional deal, for obviously for female athletes, right? The headcount. So if you get like that, then obviously you don't qualify for academic and everything else, because it all should sum up to, if you're getting 100%, then you cannot pocket outside of that money, right? So that's the headcount versus, and the equivalency scholarship means that the team has a number of scholarships. Like men's division one, they have 4.5 scholarships, and then they can keep a team. Say there's a 12 team people roster, so what they will do is they try to give everybody a little bit, maybe the top marquee guys a little bit more, so they can break the scholarships. So that's, and then obviously those people that are getting partial, they don't, they can apply for academic, they can apply for need based things like that, right? Like, so that's how the men's teams typically work. Okay, so you get some from tennis, some from academic, some financial aid, and then you look at an overall package and you say, okay, you know what, I got a significant amount covered. Maybe in some cases I got the full thing covered. So that's the that's the difference in the scholarship structure. And I've already gone over the need-based, academic, and additional. So before I move on, I will pause again on the scholarship slide to see if people have any questions on this, and so we can move forward. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and move to the next slide. So this is, again, this chart is a really good chart about scholarships overall. A fully funded tennis program. Again, this is not a so there's a couple things I want to cover in this, right? So if you look at this slide, the number of teams, things like that, you don't need to get too caught up because those change. People move from divisions, teams move, things like that. What you need to understand here is the scholarships limit if they are fully funded. So for example, in Division 1 men on the left, you see 4.5, and we talked about their equivalency scholarships, right? So they are the ones that they can break it down. Okay. Same with men's Division 2, right? If you look at the NAIA, they get five scholarships, and obviously they can break it down, right? These are all, only we're talking about the athletic, the tennis scholarships. And then you have NJCAA, which is your college, the junior colleges. So the reason I brought junior colleges earlier and I mentioned it's very viable, because junior colleges have 9 scholarships per team. So obviously your chances of getting more, in junior colleges is very high. I just want to mention one thing, right? So sometimes with junior colleges, the only issue is, we have found out in our experience, sometimes foreigners trying to come in, they have some challenges getting their F1 visa. So those are some things that need to be worked, kind of, how to best present it and things like that. But obviously this is a great option. And D3, NCAA Division 3 overall here, they do not provide any athletic scholarships, right? Again, but if the team wants somebody, and they have good academics, or they need some financial aid, they figure out a way to create that structure where those players can, the players can obviously come in and they can get those scholarships needed. So that's on the men's side, right? And I want to cover a little bit on the women's side as far as the scholarships concerned. So again, we mentioned that earlier, the D1, the Division 1, there's 8 full scholarships. So if you have a female athlete, and you're a parent, and your daughter or somebody else is want to play college, and they're good enough to play for an NCAA Division 1 team, which is fully funded, and the coach is interested, they will get a full ride, because that's how it works, right? Like if they're part of the eight, if they keep more than eight and they're coming in like that, like the 9, 10, those type of players, uh, they don't get an athletic scholarship, but obviously they can qualify for academic scholarships and financial aid, which is the need-based one, things like that, or other scholarships. So just kind of keep this in mind. And again, with D2 for women, you get 6 scholarships. Uh, and with NAIA 9, D3, you do not get the scholarships, things like that. So these are some of these things. Just kind of keep this in mind. I mean, this is, again, when you're doing your research, it's a back of the envelope thing about, okay, how am I going to figure out what's the best option for me here? So I will take a quick pause again before I move from this slide here to understand the, so if people have any questions on the scholarship part, because obviously this is a critical one in college tennis. Okay, great. We're going to move on to the next slide now. So the next slide is, this is something I've been in India, right? And a lot of the players, they want to go and, they have aspirations of playing pros, things like that. So I will tell you kind of like my experiences, and I've seen very good college players and all that. And I've seen the experiences about what the pro pathway looks like. So the colleges, by and large, they have great infrastructure. Okay, so you have great courts, uh, world-class gyms. There's obviously strength coach, there's speed coach. Even if you go to a small college that is not part of the NCAA system, small NAIA schools, they have these better than probably the academy or the club where you have played. Okay, so and obviously when you look at the bigger ones, my daughter committed recently in class of 2024 in one of the good programs, and I mean obviously their thing is like world class. It's like a professional football team, right? So they have that. The coaching staff now over the years have increased, right? When I was playing long back, there's a lot of the college coaches, they were these college coaches were, a lot of them were more managers, they were professors. They would come in and they would take college coaching, right? So they didn't really know a whole lot about college tennis. And this, but now you have professional former pros coming in playing, in college, right? As college coaches, you have really very active coaches coming in who know how to work with players, the player pathways, things like that. So that's a great thing about college tennis. Okay, and it's starting to show, right? Like and also the behavior of the teams. So they're allowing players to go play these fall pro tournaments. They're encouraging them to go play in summer, the pro events, right? A lot of them play even in winter. I was there in Thanksgiving with my daughter in a 15K in Santo Domingo. I mean, the draw, that was right the week of Thanksgiving. The draw was full of college players. Okay, they had a men's tournament. There were guys with men's teams, and in the women's draw, I was probably 50% of the players, probably 50% of the players had were active college players. So we just got one question here that that came in chat, and I'm going to quickly answer that question and then move forward. So the question was, how is UTR? How much does UTR matter in tennis recruiting? So so the UTR is very interesting. So the college coaches, it has become the de facto standard. Okay, so UTR, for people that do not know, it's called the Universal Tennis Rating, right? So this has become kind of the de facto measure, like a quick back of the envelope. You look at the UTR and you see, okay, where does the player stand? So if I say that it doesn't matter, that's a straight lie, right? Now, with that said, what happened was, and I talked to a lot of college coaches. Okay, so we're actively talking to them. About 2 years back or so, it got so big that they were looking at UTR as the only de facto factor. So they have kind of moved away from it a little bit. They're looking at other things right now, right? So for example, very similar to UTR is something called WTN, which is which is the World Tennis Number. That's basically the UTR's competitor, run by ITF. WTN right now, again, this is a very personal opinion. I mean, I think it would be phenomenal, right? Like the federations are coming in right now, it's not very accurate for a couple of reasons. One, they're only taking sanctioned tournaments. So if you're part of USTA and you're playing a tournament, a junior tournament, you're going to have a WTN. You play ITF, you're going to have a WTN. But you go and play a normal UTR tournament, a men's tournament, something else, those are not counted right now, right? Also, I believe the pro events, the 15, 25Ks, those are not part of WTN. If, at least till very recent. I haven't checked that in last couple of days. So anyway, so when I look at WTN for a player, I look at UTR for a player. UTR is more accurate at this point than WTN. But with that said, even with UTR, we have seen that there's a lot of discrepancies with UTR. For example, in the US, if you're playing juniors, personally, I would say by and large, the UTR is correct. Okay, so it's within the range. Like a kid that's a 9.5 UTR, sure, they can beat a 10.5, on a good day. But, they are not a 12, right? In general, by and large. So the coaches understand that, and the good ones obviously look at uh, the definitions of the UTR and where they are. Some countries, though, the UTR is not very accurate. Like I have traveled extensively in South America, Central America. I've seen players, even in India. We've been here for the last few weeks. My kid's been playing the J200s now, and we have seen players that are very good. That are like, especially there are some girls that are in low to mid 8 UTRs, but they play like a 9.5 UTR because they just don't have the exposure. Also, in India, the AITA, which is the governing body, when they run their tournaments right now, those results don't put into UTR. So a cluster of their tournaments results don't show up and things like that. But college coaches look at that. Not all coaches probably go so deep into this. It's almost like um, in the software there is an adage, right? Like, you don't get fired for hiring IBM. So they'll go by the UTR, and then if the player doesn't pan out, they'll be like, well, look, the UTR was great. So some coaches think like that, but there's obviously coaches now that are looking at developmental pathway, and they're like, okay, I'm going to look a lot beyond UTR, things like that, about how to do it, and plus how they got the UTR. So that's also very important. And a lot of coaches look there. And again, these are something when you work yourself or work with a consultant, if your UTR is not very high, but say you're playing tournaments, like you're playing ITF junior tournaments, for example, sometimes we see for players, the UTRs are a little bit suppressed for two reasons. One, they're playing in these countries where the UTRs are not very, stable, and they're switching surfaces and altitude and all that week after week. It's almost like playing pro. So they have some issues in that, right? But that's something that needs to be explained to the coaches upfront so they understand and they buy into it. So that's where, hopefully you guys can do it, we can help you in it, or whoever's helping you should be actively working on that and not relying on the coaches. So I went a little bit longer on the UTR because this is very, very key, and we wanted to kind of bring that up. So before I leave this slide, one quick thing here. I mean, these rankings that we put in there, don't go by the rankings. I mean, they switch. So like, Cam Norrie, these things might change a little bit. But as you can see, there's a cluster of ATP singles players that are college alums or that came from playing college. Obviously, in the women, there's quite a few coming in, several in doubles coming there. So this is becoming more and more of a viable path. So and there is a whole lot of other players from college. They play pro, but the pro that you don't know, right? Like, I mean, I personally know a lot of players that are they went back to their home countries like France and Germany, and they're playing club tennis, and they play localized, but they are actually making a living playing tennis. So this is happening more and more. Okay. But again, that's the pro pathway. The biggest difference I would say is if you go to college, the college coaches in general are not going to stay on you every day to be pro. If you want to be a pro, they will provide you the support. So I know very few college coaches that will dismiss it. They will support you to the best of their abilities by and large, right? But the player has to own the journey and say, okay, you know what, I'm going to use the infrastructure, I'm going to do this. Because if somebody wants to, I'm going to leave it with this last thing. If somebody wants to be a pro, the college definitely provides the right infrastructure, the hitting base, things like that. That is not really a problem. It depends on the player. A lot of them don't become pros because, I mean, tennis pro is being very hard. There's not a lot of people make actual money. I mean, unlike people think that, right? Like earlier, top 100 could make a living. Now, even I know personally, I know players that are just outside of the 100. I mean, it's like an entry-level job, because by the time they pay all their expenses and everything else, unless they are lucky to get good sponsors and things like that. So a lot of the players, by the time they graduate, they see that their friends are getting jobs, in good companies, close to six figures, and they're struggling now for like $1,000 payout in Little Rock. So they don't want to do it. But it's not that they didn't have the support, or they don't have the infrastructure. So again, this is more of a personal opinion, but just wanted to kind of throw it out. So before I move from the slide, I'll take a quick pause to see if anybody has any questions here.
Yeah, hi, Anirban. Nabil was this side. Thank you
Yes.
for quoting us for the UTR. I just need a clarification that I have checked out your website and it says tennis recruiting profile, and I have gone through it. I have signed up with your this profile also. I have created my profile. Can you help me out with what more this profile can help us out? Because
Yes.
my
So
son is playing tennis from last 5 to 7 years approx, and he is in a good phase, and I want to boost the things over on the US side.
sure. So like whether you come to us or you go somewhere else. So the profile is basically, it's like a kind of a basic web page for a player. That's kind of important these days. The profile should have all the information in a public domain that can be searchable. So what does that mean? What does that mean, right? Like the profile, it has players rankings, it should show the ratings, maybe some video clips, schedule of tournament, things like that. So one quick page that if the coaches search, or you can send to the coaches, and they can see that where you're going, what tournaments you're playing. That's the profile. But the profile is only one part of it. That profile needs to be marketed, especially if you're not a very elite athlete, right? Like, in the US, if you're not a blue chip athlete in tennis recruiting, that you are playing the UST and you're a blue chip or a 5 star, or you don't play the UST system, you're playing ITFs and you're, close to top 100. So then you're not noticed as much all the time, right? So that's your job to go and proactively notice. So that's one of the things that you do with the profile is you go, you find out the target colleges that you go, and then you go towards that. So this is kind of like what the consultants do, or what we do at Tennis Wizard, right? So we talk to you, we understand your level, we truly understand your financial situation, things like that. We help come up with a list of colleges, right? Like, 15, 20 colleges, sometimes maybe less. And we look at colleges where you think you're a shoe in, you can definitely get in. We look at colleges where you may be, getting the right fit, and some are rich colleges you really want to go, but you're not good enough right now, right? I mean, very bluntly speaking. And then what we do is we create that profile, and we try to market it in a variety of ways to the colleges, through Instagram, through social media, through giving them, building the rapport, things like that. Like so the platform provides the email templates, things like that, Avilash. And then what we do is, through those, we try to make the connections. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about not just our offering, but how the process looks like. Again, for any of these that I'm saying, creating the profile, writing those emails, I mean, how to reach out, when to reach out. These are all specific rules and regulations, because there are times the college coaches can contact you. There are times they are prohibited to contact you. So you can do your own research. You can hire a consultant. You can come to us. But regardless, you need to be able to kind of actively doing that. Okay. Avilash, did that answer your question?
Yeah. I got your point, and I hope it's still on a free side. We can create it for free. Tennis recruiting profile.
Yes, you can. You
All
can
right.
create,
Oh,
you can go
okay.
in, and again, the base version, you can go in, just sign in and get your profile free. So there's no payment needed for that. You can, and then you can start marketing that. So that's all we are providing as well. You can, I mean, you can just sign up, do it. If you have any questions, you can obviously reach out to us as well. All right. So
Thank you, Nabil. Thank you very
absolutely.
much.
So we got one more question here, from Mohammed Ibrahim, and the question said that, becoming a pro, can you explain what level or rank is reached and the player is called a pro? So there is really no definition of what a pro is. Okay, I know players that have been playing full time for years, and they have never got one ITF ranking point in men or women. And I'm not even talking about ATP or WTA point, ITF ranking. So, there's a after the juniors, when they start playing pro, now the ITF has come up with a ranking system. It's like an intermediary ranking called ITF men's ranking, ITF women's ranking. So you win a qualifying match, here and there you start getting points, right? Like final round of qualifying, you reach in a 15K, you get points. You don't get any money, you get points. So I know players that haven't got that. They're playing a full circuit. They call them a pro. So there is really no defined definition of a pro. Okay, the pro is, so that's kind of like from a general standpoint. As far as the college is concerned, okay, and I think that's where your question is. Pro means that you are making money, and there is some rules and regulations about how much money you can make and what causes your eligibility to not be eligible, and things like that. So there's a slide on that. So Mohammed, I'm gonna go over that in detail in that slide of how much money you can take, and if you take more, how you show it, things like that. So that's pretty much how the colleges care about pro. So I'm gonna pause here just a little bit. Mohammed, do you have any clarifying questions on that before I move to the next question? Okay, I think you said that's fine. So there's another question here from Kapil Dinesh. So what if someone does not have a UTR, since there are no UTR events in India? Do they have a chance of getting into the US college? Talking about a player who's top 100 in national ranking India, but not have played ITF tournament due to financial restrictions. Thank you. So this is very common, Kapil. So this is what I was saying, right? In India, there are several players that I know that are playing the men's and women's 1 lakh tournaments. They're very good. I look at them, 5 minutes, I can tell them, right? Like these are like, and I have a pretty good range. I understand what their UTR level is. That's when it gets a little bit tricky, because you can work with somebody who has some connections with the coaches, that the coaches trust them. You can create the videos of the players playing. Obviously, like they want to see some live video matches, not like the ones they're feeding and rallying, because that can be fabricated. If you don't have a good UTR, or your UTR is subsided and you're not playing ITFs because of financial reasons, which is very viable, there is that is definitely a challenge. And we work with, majority of the people we work with are those that we try to package them the best way we can. We go to the coaches and we tell them, I saw a player this time, like I have to tell you this, right? Like, there's this one girl that I saw in India this time playing. UTR is very low. She was around, 882, because she's played limited number of tournaments. She played the J100. I mean, she was a qualifier, reached the quarters. The next 2 tournaments, she lost to players who were like, right around 200 in 3-set tiebreak. So somebody like that, it's very important that the story is told to the coaches and explained, whether directly by the parent or by a platform like us or a consultant, somebody. So that the sale there needs to happen a little bit more for those kind of players, because the data set's not out there. So Kapil, did that answer your question? Okay, yeah. So again, a lot of it is educating the coaches. So one cannot make the assumption that the college coaches are all super knowledgeable about all of these. Okay, so they may be a good coach, but they don't really, remember, this is the job of the player to sell them, especially if they are not elite. If they're playing junior slams, or they're already in ATP, WTA rankings, they don't need to worry so much. But the rest, it's the onus on the player and the family to sell them. Okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move on from this slide to see if anybody has any other question. Okay, excellent. So we move to the next slide. Let's talk about the prize money rules. So this goes back directly to Mohammed, your question, okay? How much money is allowed? So now, first of all, if a player is making up to $10,000 from their high school levels time, and I'll tell you how they find this 10,000, right? It's allowed. There is nothing needed. Okay. So for example, if a player is playing, and how does this college governing bodies know that if your player is earning money? Well, 2 ways. One, if they're getting money in a recognized tournament that is run like an ITF Pro event, right? You go to, it shows how much money they have made. Sometimes they make 200, sometimes they make 500. So it adds up, right? So you can't obviously lie about that and tell that they didn't make any money, because it's public domain. Also, the divisions do their own due diligence, like NCAA. They know what pays, like German leagues pay, right? Like they know that the French leagues pay. They know that in India players play AITA tournaments. Those have money, but those information is not really all public. They can't just do a quick Google search and do it. So a lot of times they ask the players, you played this, did you make prize money, things like that. And again, if you're playing small club matches, small league matches in your country, it's not published and you make money, they may never know. But to be safe, especially if you're not making a lot of money and you're within that range, it's very important that you can disclose it and you can say, okay, I made this money in these tournaments, but I have not made more than $10,000. So that's very straightforward. You can make more than 10,000 also. If it moves the cap, you have to show the delta, that what you made. Say you made 12,000 in a year, that 2,000 delta, you need to show how that money is spent. Anybody that's playing tennis, you know how expensive this sport is, from rackets to strings to travel to coaching to all that. You can show all of those. You don't need to necessarily even show them to show original receipts, but if you can create an itemized receipt, things like that, in a spreadsheet and say, this is how I spent for this tournament, things like that, that's also allowed. But it's really important to keep that kind of a documentation when you're playing money. And this is, again, the assumption here is the players coming to college, they are at best at a futures level or a challenger level where they are not making a ton of money. If a kid is playing main draw grand slams in men's or women's and you know breaking in 100Ks, those are different issues. So those people don't, like, that's not the necessarily the college profile. Although now there are colleges, there are players that are coming in that are super elite. Like, for example, Diana Schneider, I'm going to give an example. She qualified for the main draw for the Australian Open in the women's, right? And so, you know, Diana Schneider was a very elite junior, and she committed to North Carolina State. So some players like that are also coming in for 1 or 2 years. They will come in, they want to play, and 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 just make sure that they're getting that experience. Okay, so as far as the prize money is concerned, the one thing that you have to be very careful is this is a part that you can get non-compliant very quickly. How you're getting the money, things like that. We help players in that to understand the money part. Also, they can reach out to the right colleges that they're talking to their compliance officers. So every college has compliance officers, and they can help guide you to make sure that you don't become non-compliant, so you cannot get the scholarships and cannot play. Okay. So I'll pause here to see if anybody has any other questions on the prize money acceptance rules. All right. We move on to the next one. So this is a very new thing. Okay. So I want to talk to you, and I can bet here probably a lot of people have not heard about this, called NIL, name, image, and likeness. So if you Google NIL, you will see it came out only in the last year and a half, 2 years. Okay. And just a little history of this, right? So how did NIL come through? Tennis is not a big money-making sport, right? In college, the biggest sports are American football, basketball. Those are the big ones, and a little bit maybe baseball, not as much. So football and basketball, what was happening was earlier, the players used to get scholarships, they get the full ride, they come and play. But there are all these basketball stars in college, or football stars. Their jerseys sell with the college brand with their name there for millions of dollars. So what was happening was there was a big challenge, because these players are not happy. Tennis players are happy if they get their college covered and they get a little bit extra money. They're super happy. Okay. But there are people that are, these college athletes wanted to say that, you know what, I'm the brand, I'm coming in, I'm a great football player. My jerseys, my shoes, my branded stuff is sold for $30 million, and I only got my college paid for. So there was all this, challenge going on. And then what happened was, over that time, it went to Supreme Court. Like, there's a whole thing happened with the legislature and all that, and they came with this thing saying that players can monetize their brand. So what does that mean? They can monetize, like, they have great social media following. I mean, their logo stuff is selling, things like that. they can collect the money. This is an area what we do in our platform. We provide you all the rules, but we are not an NIL compliance house. Okay, it's still new. A lot of the rules are being changed, but we give you enough information so you understand the landscape and who to contact, because the NIL rules also varies by state. It's not fully ironed out. Okay, and large colleges already have NIL compliance people that are helping tennis players as well make the brand. So just kind of keep this in mind. So NIL is a very important facet now for players to make money, okay, by monetizing their brand. So this is not like I'm going and doing a job or I'm doing a tennis lesson. This is, I'm a great player and I want to come and talk about it on Instagram, or I mean, I share certain things on Instagram and I have a mass following and I'm monetizing that, or I'm going and cutting a ribbon for somebody's event, or I'm a brand ambassador for a local pizza joint. I mean, that may be a bad example as a tennis player, maybe, like an organic food joint or whatever, right? So those ways players can make money now while they're in college, and this was not the case before. So this is going to be a phenomenal thing. I think obviously for football and basketball, tennis is going to get some benefits. So we provide what we are doing in our platform. When people sign in with the paid version, we provide all the compliance, all the rules, and we help guide. What we do not do is we do not bring you NIL deals. So you come in and you say, okay, bring me an NIL deal. There are NIL brokers there, that are coming up. There are NIL platforms that are coming up that people come in and they negotiate deals. For tennis, it's not as prevalent. The deals are very small, few $100 here, maybe 1,000 there, here and there. Obviously, for the marquee sports, basketball, football, the deals are very heavy. So that's something that one needs to kind of think and consider, and at least know about it at this point. Okay, so just gonna pause here for a quick second. Who pay NIL deals and any other legal things involved in this. So the NIL deals are paid by the companies. So for example, say like you have a player that plays college tennis that's really good, that's very active on social media. They're coming on Instagram and they are talking about going and whatever, like their passion is, right? Like fitness, tennis fitness. They're doing videos, things like that. Now say Nike looks at it and say, wow, the following's quite big, for a college player. That's our demographic. So now she gets endorsed by Nike. Nike pays her and she's wearing Nike clothes. So there's a product placement element, or she's plugging in Nike words, things like that. So again, what she can and cannot do within that context, that gets a little bit tricky, but that's where the compliance laws comes in, right? So in this case, to answer your question, it's paid by the vendor, whoever they're representing, as part of the NIL. So NIL is just the compliance, the legislation, the legal, thing that governs it. But the payment happens between the vendor, the advertiser, and the player. Okay. All right. I'm going to move on to the next slide now. So again, this one, I mean, I think it's a basic one. It's a little bit of a repeat of that. So let's take you to the last slide. So what does the last slide? This is kind of our pitch. So what we do, we are, we're like a consulting company mixed with a platform for this part of the business for Tennis Wizard. $360 a year we charge for the year, and generally people can come in for 1 year unless they need the help the next year. We talk to you, we interview you, and then we come up with a college report, right? Like, a fitment report, like with the whole thing, like based on your need, interest, how much money, the probability to get the scholarships and things like that. And this is what kind of all the consulting companies do, right? So that's kind of the key part of it. We create your athletic webpage, which you can go and do it free. You don't need to pay us for that, but we create that as well. And we promote you constantly, right? So if you're coming to us in 10th grade or 11th grade and you're winning junior tournaments, like you're talking about somebody winning tournaments in India, how do people know? We have a team of marketeers that goes and promotes them. You send us the pictures, you send us the results, we promote it every year, so your brand value increases. So it's almost like your personal marketing service. On top of that, we provide you the college tennis recruitment guide. So that's like, you have access to that. That talks about all these rules. Like we only covered like a handful, right? When to connect the college coaches. You want to take a gap because you want to play and then come back. or you finished college a year back, how do you get it? There's all sorts of rules and regulations. So that guide is complete. You get access to the guide, and you also get access to the NIL guide, like what does the NIL mean, things like that. So if you pay $40 a month and you want to try it out, you get all those things except the personal college report. Okay. If you do the 360 a year, you get everything, including that report, right? So, in India, people are charging 1 lakh, 2 lakhs, which is several $1,000s, same in South America. So we try to democratize it in the way where we can help. Again, you do not need us for any of these. There's all sorts of information out there available. Hopefully this gave you a good benchmark. And then what we do is, on top of that, if you want to come to us, we'd be more than happy to help you. But that there's a cost, because obviously there's people involved, from lawyers and marketing people and all that, which we are funding at this moment to kind of help people there. So I'm going to pause here one quick second, and I'm going to pause here one quick second to see if there's any question. So one of the questions that just came here, or two questions, at what age, from Muhammad, at what age is it best to come to Tennis Wizard or other consultants for help? Okay, so definitely, I would say definitely by the 10th grade. So 10th grade, I mean, you can come in like now. If you're in 11th and 12th, obviously, what happens is from 10th, you can start learning the process. 11th grade is very key when you come in, because that's when the early offer starts happening. People come in, and by November, December, they are looking at it. The sooner you start the process as far as understanding, learning, building your brand, the better off you are. So again, we suggest people, we have people that have graduated and they came to us and say, okay, we need the help. So we try to help them the best we can at that point. 11th, 12th grade, I mean, 12th is, it's now you're sort of running against time. You want to absolutely be there. 11th, is the early decisions happen. 10th is probably the best time. We have some 9th graders come in, and they come in with a small package where we just start promoting them, because so that their brand value increases. So another question for a high school tennis player now, 15 years old, when is okay to start this type of contact with the universities? Age has nothing to do with it. It's more what grade they are. So you can let the universities know whenever, the colleges, they are not going to respond back to you. But if you start building the rapport and you start sending those promotions, and again, it's an art, right? You don't want to be the ones that sending emails all the time and nagging them. So that's what we kind of manage. We help with the right marketing presentations. Sometimes we're sending them messages through Instagram. Sometimes we're following. Hopefully they start following us, things like that. You can do that whenever. There is nothing stopping you. There is no compliance for that. The college coaches, there are certain times, the windows, they cannot do it. There is a time when they can contact. That again depends on the division and the universities and all that. So again, we provide all those guidance in the platform, in our recruitment guide. Okay. Any other questions here that I can help answer? Okay, so a couple of things on the words of caution here, and this is very important. And I was petrified to actually hear this. So especially I put this here, and I heard this in India. There are companies that are doing it, and they may be doing it in other parts of the world. Some of them, the consultants come in, they do exactly what we're talking about, and they say, okay, you pay us a fee, and then if the kid gets a full scholarship, the scholarship is valued at, $100,000. We will take a cut of that. That is straight illegal. Okay, if they are asking you and it's been known to those organizations, your kid will lose the scholarship and the eligibility. Okay, so you cannot pay a commission based on the scholarships to anybody, to us, to anybody. Okay, that is really, really important that people know how they're paying them. The second one is, you can pay a platform, like you can pay us, you can pay a consultant for it, you can pay a fee for service for that help in guiding you, coaching you, and all that. As far as there is no legality against that. But we cannot come in and say, okay, we're going to help you, you pay us this money, or you don't pay us anything upfront, but your kid gets full ride, so now you give us this. Okay, those conditional things are not allowed. So you got to be very careful as far as this is concerned. And also there's a second part. Okay, Nobody, us included, can guarantee your kid's going to get into some college and get the scholarships. Anybody can do in this. Okay, and we know a ton of coaches. This is very important. So you pay us the money and you come in and you say, okay, they're going to give us a scholarship. That is not true. Absolutely not true. And I want to be very honest with it. What happens is we go in, we understand the landscape, what you want to do. We know what the colleges want. We try to make the matchmaking and we guide you through the right email channels, right contacts, the best way to reach the coach and build that rapport. Okay. There is no guarantee in this. Even if the coach wants this, the coach can get fired, somebody else comes in. You get everything, you don't get a visa. There's a whole slew of things that can go wrong in it. Okay. And I believe that it's the fiduciary responsibility for the consultants or the platforms to be upfront about it, because otherwise you're just preying on that. So just kind of keep this in mind, right? This is now, with that said, there is thousands of universities that are there. People only look at the top and say, okay, I'm going to block myself and go to this D1 or this particular set of colleges. Especially for female athletes, again, the chances are a lot higher because there's more money available. But also for men, there is several scholarships to go and play and find the right fit. But again, you cannot pay anybody a percentage of your deal. So just kind of be mindful of this when you are when you are dealing with any such platforms or consultants. Okay, take a quick pause here. All right. So the last part, what are you going to talk about is we are, our vision for the platform for Tennis Wizard is not just for college recruiting. That's one thing. We wanted to bring in a lot of stuff from the healthcare that we believe happens on a day-to-day. For our limited time, you can go download our app. It's in beta stage right now, so it's not like, obviously, you download it free. But the whole goal is what we're coming up there is called the digital coach. So right now, the digital coach, you can reach me. If you say tomorrow you have other questions regarding college tennis, or your kid's playing, or you have a younger kid that's playing, and then you have a coach. I don't have a skin in the game with your kid. I'm not taking money from you to be the lesson. But you want a second opinion, somebody, you can get a second opinion from me. As far as their playing pathway, they're playing this, they're playing, in India, they're playing this AITA tournaments, or in the US, they're playing this, or they're in South America, or they're in Central America, they're playing or they're playing COSAT, they're playing all these variety tournaments. Okay, how or they're playing, they're playing COTEC. They're playing all these tournaments. How do I move from here? Am I in the right path? I can share my opinion as a digital coach, free of cost. You reach out. It's through messaging right now. College, and there are 3 areas that I can answer the questions in. When you can ask outside of that, I may not know the answer. This also I may not know, but I can share what I know is the player pathway. I have done this myself. My kids are doing it, going towards college, with one of them with pro aspirations. I've seen people gone through that very, very closely. I'm associated in a club where, I'm a part owner of a club where the 3 main principals were top 21 in the world ATP, 42 WTA, and 4 ATP. So I've seen a lot of players come through there in the last few years. So I've talked to a lot of them, so I can share my experience. You can do that free of cost, but you download the app and you use the messaging to reach out to me. Okay, that's that because we are also the reason you can, if you reach out to me through other messaging, I'm going to forward you there, because we also want to make sure that we are using the app and the app gets tested and things like that. So this is the second opinion. Feel free to download it from the App Store or the Google Play. Okay. All right. So that ends our presentation here, and I'm going to pause, and we have a few minutes left. So excuse me, any last questions you have, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah, hi Nirban.
Hi.
Yeah, if you can explain me more about that, what exactly recruiters look for while doing US college tennis scholarship and all.
Right. So the recruiters, well, the recruiters are really the college coaching team, right? So the coaching team looks at the overall profile of the player. So first they want to see, if this player is going to fit in. So they see, the coaches already know. So, you have players that are graduating today, you have players that are graduating 4 years out. So they have a good understanding of what their team is. They have a good understanding of the competition, who they compete with, and they want to get a player ideally that can come in and create an impact. They don't need to be number one in the team, but they want impact player. If they're not getting an impact player, they think that they can build the player, they do that as well, right? So those are some things that they're looking at from a playing standpoint. They also look at the player profile, right? I mean, they, and that's where you're managing your social media, things like that has become so important now. They want to make sure the player that's coming in, they have the right cultural fit within the team. And these vary. Some teams are very, sharp elbow team. They're all competing, they foster on that. Some teams are very collaborative. So, that's one of the things that's not like really defined well. So we also tell people, right, there's a series of questions that you need to ask. You need to understand how the coaches are measured, right? So they have the incentive. Remember, the coaches are also people that are incentivized by their career and money. So they have incentives on how they get measured and they get paid, right? So it fits in within that model. And obviously they want to make sure that you are right, you are a right candidate. And I'm going to add one quick thing. Pablo asked here, so playing COSAT in South America, South America is relevant for coaches. Yes, COSAT, COTEC, they're all important, right? Because you playing this tournament, these are part of the junior tournaments. And again, if you're talking to a coach that's not very familiar with it, that's the job for you or for the platforms to really present it, right? And just say, hey, look, here is the level. Maybe the UTR is not as good. I mean, we went to Bolivia, right? And I've seen players in Bolivia, I've seen players in Colombia, I've seen players in Ecuador, phenomenal players. They play domestically. They do not live outside, right? So they're playing. Some of them are also playing the COSAT tournaments only when it's in their countries for financial reason. But you take a player and then you have to create the story around why this player is an impact player. So hope that answered question. So we still have a few minutes left, but we don't need to stay the whole time, but I'm going to keep it open and see if anybody has any other questions. Again, you can reach out to me or you can reach out to us through any of this media. Ideally, if you want to ask me specific questions about your kid, about the pathway, things like that, then, you want to go download this app and talk to us about it. Sure, guys. Thank you. I appreciate you guys coming in, and we'll try to do another one also shortly. So if you have any questions, just feel free to reach out. And again, you don't have to pay us. This is not our main business. We wanted to do it to help people out in this, okay? Because this is a pretty big maze if you are not insider and you don't know this. So hopefully you understand. Again, everything that we covered, you can do it yourself, or you can pay us some, you can pay a consultant. But again, that's the main info. The main part of this is to create your profile and market it to the coaches and make sure that that you are in contact with the right colleges, keeping in mind that your kid is the right fitment there. That's the right thing. So that's super important, and to get that honest answer, from whoever's helping you out. Yes, we are going to be sharing, our team's going to be sharing the PDF and the video. If you registered, we'll be sharing that with you guys after the call. Okay. And periodically we also share what is the best number or email to reach you. So I mean, you can reach us through any of these avenues, and then you can download the app like we talked about, the Tennis Wizard app. And that's probably the best way to reach me is through the app, through the messaging. Because we want to make sure we collect the questions and we have a track of the questions evolving. Okay. Good. Okay. Okay. All right, everybody. Well, again, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I know that in the US, it's late evening, depending on whether in the East Coast and stuff, and morning day here in India right now. But thank you, everybody. I really, really appreciate that. I look forward to hear from you. And then again, I want you to the best wishes for you or your kids as far as their journey is concerned in tennis. Okay. All right. Good luck, everybody. Thank you.